Welcome to the cybersecurity. I'm sorry, the cybersecurity podcast brought to you by CatchMark. It is Wednesday, April 26th, and this is try number 2.
You got that right. The reason we're laughing is because once again we had a little bit of a issue, which is fine.
I mean it's happens. A little. I mean we're borderline boomers.
But what's going through my mind is we just talked about being better than 500 on average of sound and how we were better than the Tigers in the standings, and now we're not.
Screwed it up. Now we're
sub 500. We're right with the Tigers in the standings.
Yep, I am.
You're a baseball fan.
It's still a pretty good baseball average, right?
Yeah.
2 for 5 is not a bad hitting average, but yeah. So we're back with our cybersecurity podcast. We're live
now,
and. You know, like I've only been doing technology work for 20 years now. So, I mean, like I'm getting better. It's a work in progress.
You know, this kind of hits though about some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, cybersecurity insurance, and how the human element is still a problem. And errors are made, and that's what that kind of stuff is for, is to protect us.
So Seth is like, where's my podcast?
Yeah.
Seth, we apologize.
301.
301.
He was on it.
He was. I mean, I clicked go live like 2-3 minutes late, and Seth was already on there, and he's like, where are you guys at? So, so we're going to talk a little bit today about cybersecurity insurance and the ins and outs, and not that we know everything about insurance. I will say that, right. But we know a little bit about
pros and cons
and the things that you need to think about. And I think it's important now to really understand the impact of technology on your business.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand the risk that a technology outage or a data breach poses to your business. And I don't think enough business owners think about that. So I think about some of the businesses we support, manufacturing, healthcare, finance, service-oriented businesses. Every manufacturing customer that we have relies on technology, from the machines that cut things to the CAD devices that design things, to the file shares that allow that stuff to be transferred and accessed, down to service organizations that rely on payment systems to be able to take your payments, to kind of go forward and do those things. And in the healthcare and the finance industry, the amount of data and personal data that they collect and the reputation hit that could come from a breach. It's super important nowadays. I was just looking it up. The average cost of a data breach increased 2.6% from $4.24 million in 2001 to $4.35 million in 2022. The highest it's been in the history of IBM's The Cost of a Data Breach report. So, again, like data breaches cost businesses a lot of money. And you need to protect yourself. And there's some businesses that couldn't afford the downtime or the lost revenue.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, you'd mentioned downtime. In cybersecurity, we always, you'd mentioned before we went live, now we are live, is that you hate the part we don't like about being in cybersecurity is we're the doom and gloom stats, right? And all that stuff. But with today's world and the cyber criminal activity we see, it's not, we always say it's not a matter of if but when, and you've got to almost assume that you're going to be breached at some point. And we've talked a lot about technical measures the last couple of weeks that you can put in place, and we've also talked about the human element and how it's still a part of that factor. And that's where we'll get into talking about things you can do to prepare and then mitigate along with getting that insurance. But at the end, it's still a protection mechanism. It should be a part of a program and a layer.
Yeah. So I think one of the first things, as I was kind of preparing for this podcast, that I think a lot of people need to understand is that, most businesses have liability insurance. Most businesses have, protection against mistakes and those types of things. Very, very few of those traditional policies cover cyber related items. And so there's a huge rise in people trying to claim that stuff and finding out that, that's not covered under my normal liability policy. That's cyber related. And so I think it's important for people to understand that what the state of cybersecurity insurance or what they need to do there. And so you need to have a policy, first off, that is specific to cybersecurity, that is specific to technology, to protect yourself from those types of things. And from, looking at what I've seen is there's network security and privacy liability, network business interruption, media liability, and errors and omissions. And so that's a separate policy than your normal policy that you would get from a normal insurer for business insurance. And I think that's important for people to understand. The other thing that I think is important to understand from a cybersecurity insurance perspective is it's getting harder to get cybersecurity insurance.
Yeah, it's okay. Good point, right? And the cost has gone up as well, right? So I think 5 years ago, the cybersecurity insurance landscape was vastly different.
It was a booming market, like they were putting out.
Right.
Yep.
But as we continue to report year after year, and it's funny, we say these stats between years 2020, 2021, you can almost go every 6 months, right? Because that stuff is doubling up so quickly. That they're, with the claims that are filed, they're losing out on that parts. They have to adjust their costs.
Unprecedented losses in like 19, 20, 21.
Right. And so not only is the insurance becoming more expensive to get or to purchase, it could be, small businesses in the tens of thousands. It's also, there are a lot more requirements that have to be
they're not underwriting you
before they're even going to consider you.
So we actually had that happen. We had cyber insurance through our general business insurance policy for CatchMark, and between 20 and 21, they basically just said, we're not providing this insurance anymore. They got completely out of the cyber insurance business.
Wow.
And we had to go find somebody else to insure us. And again, it's because I think a lot of the insurance companies rush to this market thinking, hey, this is a new market that we could get money back, without really understanding the risk in the market. And then claims just started piling up and they started losing money. The market became a hard market for them to make money in. And then what you've seen in the last 2 years is them really
trying to recoup,
really drawing back and trying to recoup, and being really careful about who they insure. So let's talk a little bit about why it's such a hard market to begin with. Like why are there so many claims? And we touched on this in our last couple podcasts, but I think it's good to just kind of go over that again, Brian.
Yeah. So again, if you're interested in cybersecurity insurance, we talked about they're going to have requirements in place prior to writing you coverage. And again, I'd mentioned it's part of, do I need cybersecurity insurance? My answer to that is yes, but it should be part of a program effort, right? It should be a part of your overall strategy at tackling risk for your company. So what does that mean? It means, do you already have a cybersecurity program in place? Do you have policies and procedures that align to reduce risk and mitigate risk within your organization? When I think about some of the insurance questionnaires that I've seen come across, and again, year after year, customers will share that with, hey, I need an update. Are we good here? The requirements change. So, they're going to ask you things.
The insurance companies are getting smarter.
Yeah. First of all, they're going to start out, what kind of data do you have, right? What kind of data do you manage? Is it personal, financial, health related? How many records do you have? How many employees? What's your financial, coming in, coming out? But then they're going to go into, again, do you have MFA enabled? Do you use VPN for remote users? Do you have, again, cybersecurity policies and procedures in place? Are you monitoring your own risk? Do you do that? How often do you do that? Do you train your users, right?
Yeah. I think so. So I think what happened there was that they really didn't understand the cybersecurity landscape, and how often breaches actually happen and how often cybersecurity incidents happen, until they started issuing policies. And then they found out, because they got just flooded with claims, because people, one, they don't have very good cyber hygiene as a business, all the reasons that you just said. And two, like these things happen a lot. I mean, the attack rate is just, they're just out there nonstop. And so those two things put together makes it a hard market, right? Like it's out there and people aren't good at protecting from it. So I think that both of those things are a big deal. And going back to what you said, the insurance companies have kind of pivoted to a place now where they are not going to insure you, or they don't even consider you insurable unless you're doing the things you just mentioned. They're assuming you're already doing everything you're supposed to do from a cybersecurity perspective before they're going to give you, even underwrite you for an insurance policy, right?
Yeah, they're doing their due diligence to make sure that, again, we talk about real life examples. If you bring a car with flat tires and leaking gas and all that stuff right to your auto, they're not, or you're same with your house. If, prior to getting insurance for your house, they're going to maybe send an adjuster out to take a look at it and make sure that, windows are not broken and foundations secure, right? So again, we're talking about the same thing with cybersecurity. Do you have a secure foundation already in place, or are you working towards one? And that's, again, a lot of times insurance companies, that's kind of one of the pros to look at when you're considering insurance is if you, prior to getting that insurance policy, they're probably going to give you some sort of a assessment questionnaire, and it's good to run down that. And if you're trying to fill one of those out, and we've seen this happen, right? And I know you've got a use case where this happened recently with somebody where they fill it out and they think they've done it the correct way or provided the correct answers, only to find out that when a claim does need to be filed, those things weren't in place.
Right. So basically, you go down that insurance questionnaire, and they don't know how to actually answer the questions.
Yeah.
And so they answer yes on all of them, right? And they get insurance, and then something happens, and they send an adjuster out, and they're not doing any of that stuff. Guess what?
They're not.
Yeah. You're not covered. So you're not doing vulnerability management. You are running software that's 10 years old and non-supported.
Yep.
You do have bad practices where everybody has administrative rights. Like all of these things that happen, and it's getting, I would say most people don't even know what they don't know on the cybersecurity side. So that questionnaire, it's a crapshoot.
And that's where we can help out. So here at CatchMark, we do cybersecurity assessments as one of our service lanes in the cybersecurity team. And just having that third-party set of eyes to help you out with those questionnaires and give you that assessment already gets you started down the right road when you're,
right,
consider this as an option.
Yeah. I think that's super important for people to understand. So what are the, if you don't have insurance or if you do have insurance, what are some of the things that it protects you from?
So, again, one of the things I would say too is if you are looking into insurance, do some due diligence there, make sure that company has teams that help out with forensics and incident response if something does happen. But some of the pros to having insurance would be if you did have an incident where you had a breach, maybe you had a ransomware attack. They're there to assist with covering some of the financial fees. Again, they have probably retainers with companies that will do some of that forensic work for you. Again, another pro would be if you're looking for the insurance, they're going to help you, if you haven't already done so, assess that risk for your company, right? For the vulnerabilities and the holes you already have. And they're probably going to recommend, and we've seen this before. And by the way, we talk about changes, right? So I remember one of the last questionnaires I helped a customer with, they said, well, we have AV, we have antivirus. Now the insurance company was looking for next gen antivirus, right? It wasn't just the standard definition files that we get. No, they want it to have some AI in there and learning what those new viruses are. And again, having that insurance would help build customer confidence for your business.
Yeah. So some of the things that the insurance does protect you from that you would not be protected from if you didn't have insurance, business interruption. So that's the first one that I can think of. You can't get your work done because your technology systems aren't operating. And so if you're a cash-based business that's relying on bringing in invoices every month to pay the bills, which a lot of small to medium businesses are, and you don't have a line of credit, you're done. You could severe breach, ransomware incident where you can't get to your data that lasts for weeks could end your business. So that's one of them. One that a lot of people don't think about is media liability. So one of those things is, infringement on intellectual property. So say you're keeping your own trade secrets, or you have trade secrets from a partner that you have a signed agreement for, and your breach leaks your partner's trade secrets, and so some of that can be protected. Forensics, like the actual digging in to see what happens. A lot of insurance policies will have that. And then errors and omissions, which is really, I can't get my job done as well for a customer because my systems are off. And so if I make a mistake, I'm more liable to make a mistake if I don't have a computer helping me or a system that I'm used to.
Right.
And so, the bottom line though is that be knowledgeable about your insurance and make sure it's custom to you on like how you do business and what you do. Unfortunately, a lot of business owners don't step back and think about that before they're doing that. They're just, give me some cyber insurance.
Just pay the bill
and walk away, and I'm protected from everything. And that's not a good practice.
No, and like you said, it's what's the coverage for? What's it there to support in case there is an incident? What type of incidents are covered? And again, doing the due diligence to make sure when those things are in that questionnaire and prepping you for potentially getting that insurance, that you are covered in the areas that are described. You're doing your part.
Yeah. One of the other things I would say is don't scrimp when it comes to cyber insurance. What I mean by that is, technology-based people are expensive. And so we have an unnamed customer that was breached with ransomware. The breach happened for 6 months. They took a bunch of data. Then they squatted on their server on their way out after they'd gotten all the data they wanted. Cyber security professionals and technology professionals that can help you with that are not cheap. And so if your policy only covers you for $5,000, you're going to burn through that $5,000 pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If you're following the right stuff, if you're doing the things and can answer yes in those insurance questionnaires, you probably already know this. If you answer yes and you don't have a program, you probably don't, and you're going to find out in a really bad way. So don't scrimp is one of the things I would say as well. Other things that are risky or that can happen because of a breach. Brian, anything else you can think of?
Yeah, again, we talked about, how do you pay your employees potentially if you don't have that income stream coming in or that data to access. So those are some of the things that can happen for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking about stuff like if I leaked out your social security number and all of your personal information, would you be happy with CatchMark?
No, so your customer reputation, right? Your business reputation, and
not just your reputation, but your employees could sue you.
Could legally
sue you for leaking their information, right? Like, and then the reputational harm that can come from that is also, that's a big deal, and you might not be able to weather that storm without some help on the backside, right? It's a risk mitigation technique to have insurance. So, anything else you can think about from cyber insurance perspective, Brian?
Again, I would say, making sure that, I guess you come back to the question, if I'm a business owner, because we talked about the high cost and the effort to get it, is it a priority for me, right? And I think that kind of depends on your risk posture. How much risk you're willing to accept and live with. But again,
so would you ever recommend a business owner not have cyber insurance?
No, I would recommend that. Again, we talked kind of about, it's not if, but when, and again, if you're technology connected and maybe you are doing all the right things. Maybe we do have a program in place. Maybe we do have policies and procedures, but we come back to, errors still happen, right?
Right.
There's still a human element. There's still a system that may not receive the patch it needs. There's still, maybe some requirements legally that you have, or some industries that require you to have cybersecurity insurance.
There's still costs. So, you can have a great cybersecurity. So let's talk about ransomware just as a quick example. Like, you can be backing up your systems. You can have a great disaster recovery plan. You can get ransomware and lose a day of work, and it's $30,000.
Yeah.
Right. If you're a big enough company, it might take you a day to get everything recovered and back organizationally working, even though your plan went off without a hitch, right? Like there's still losses that can happen even when you do things the right way. And again, it's not if, it's when. Everybody's going to get breached at some point. It's just a matter of when and how much and how you can recover from that. And without cybersecurity insurance, you better have some capital in your hands because
something to
fall back on. It's gonna get you. So yeah.
I would say, too, again, if you get cybersecurity insurance, so we talked about some of the reasons why you'd want it, some of the pros behind it. We've talked about one of the cons being the cost. I would also say, again, we'd mentioned make sure if you're looking into cybersecurity insurance, figure out what types of events are covered, what's the range, right? What are some of the limitations within that coverage? Make sure you're reading through that information, but don't allow, again, just having insurance to give you a false sense of security. Like, okay, we got insurance.
That's a good point,
now, right? And we're done. It's not a substitute. Again, it's a part of the layered approach to addressing risk for your company. And then, if an event does happen, just because you have insurance, it doesn't mean that event's going to be solved tomorrow. Doesn't mean that the claim's going to be paid next week, right? So understanding kind of what that looks like, and we always talk about tabletop exercises, right? So have a tabletop exercise and kind of run through that process. Hey, who do I call? Have an idea of how long that maybe it's going to take. Maybe have that conversation about, hey, if an event happens, how long before we can get back up and running again?
Right. I think it's important too. A couple of things that cyber insurance never covers: potential on potential revenue gain. So it will not cover future business that you lost because you were breached. So, if I wasn't breached, I would have made another $10 million, right? Like, which, I mean, you can back into that with financials. If I'm making X amount per month, but I didn't this month, it doesn't cover that. And then it does not cost the lost value of stolen intellectual property. So, for example, let's say, we at CatchMark created the most brilliant widget in the entire world. And all the designs are sitting in our back-end system. It gets breached, and that information is now sold online. Mm-hmm. And yes, we could go after every single business that produces a lookalike widget. But insurance isn't going to cover us to bring that litigation. It's not going to cover us for lost, revenue because somebody else made a pretty close copy. So a couple of things that insurance will not protect you from that hopefully a functioning cybersecurity program can. And so again, there's things that are out there that, it is a scary world, connected world, lots and lots of tools and good things about it, but lots of kind of scary things. You got to protect yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And those are some areas, again, that we can help out with. So if you're looking to go down the road, or if you have insurance and the new questionnaire comes out and you're unsure, we provide cybersecurity assessments. If you're interested in insurance and you get the questionnaire and you're like, wow, you see all the stuff that they're asking you for and the requirements they want in place, and you don't have those in place, then we help establish a functioning cybersecurity program, help you develop the policies and procedures to put in place to address those needs.
Yeah. So I did a little digging in the background, and there's 8 reasons why you want cybersecurity insurance. Okay. The first one is it responds to ransomware, which I think is a huge one. I mean, everybody's seen on the news where city governments have been shut down for months. The customer I'm referring to that we had, they were down for a good 6 weeks, 7 weeks. In that instance, the person that was squatting on their server corrupted their backups. So they had a good backup in place, but
were encrypted.
Yeah, they couldn't get them.
Yeah.
And so that's number one. Number 2 is you're relying on technology to operate your business.
Yep.
Not many businesses nowadays are not
exempt from that.
Most are reliant in some manner on technology to run their business. It's part of a board number 3 is your organization holds a large volume of personal data. So this is one that you mentioned, like what type of data are you holding? If you're a healthcare organization and you don't have a cybersecurity program and you don't have cyber insurance, yikes. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
A financial organization, same thing. And if you're a consumer out there and you go to the doctor and you ask them and they tell you they don't, I might find another doctor.
Yeah.
Just because your data is at risk, and everything that you've ever had wrong with you that you may not want other people to know about is at risk too. Number 4, it's part of a board of directors due diligence. So if you're on maybe a publicly traded company or a nonprofit that has a board, it's part of your due diligence to make sure that cybersecurity is being done. We do some cybersecurity work for a few startups and their boards. I mean, we're helping to create that cybersecurity program for them because of the board. You're subject to privacy regulations. So if you are going to the doctor, they're responsible to meet HIPAA requirements. Those are privacy regulations that they're supposed to meet, and they're supposed to take that seriously and report breaches and the whole 9 yards. A lot of people, number 6, it's a contractual requirement.
Yep.
A lot of companies nowadays, before they'll do business with you,
hold each other responsible.
Will hold you responsible contractually for in your contract that you have a cybersecurity program.
Shared data between the two companies.
Absolutely. Yep. And I would completely expect that. It comes with a turnkey incident response plan, so it helps you to. So your incident response plan is, what do I do when something happens, right? Yeah. Well, with insurance, they're going to have some steps for you right off the bat. They're going to be able to give you funding. They're going to be able to have a forensics team,
provide those teams,
provide some of that stuff and some of that support and expertise that you might not already have. Of course, you could work with a company like CatchMark too, and we could guide you there too. And then its pre-loss services are included as part of insurance. So what they're doing is they're risk mitigating by trying to help you be better to begin with. Right. So they're not reacting to the breach. They're being proactive. And that's where a lot of those insurance questionnaires come from.
Like exactly. They're trying to make sure you've got things in place and before they're going to even write you the policy just to protect yourself from yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. So some serious stuff. And those are kind of 8 reasons why it's, good reasons to have cybersecurity insurance. I can't imagine being in business without it. And again, there are businesses out there that don't, and there are businesses out there that don't do anything from a cybersecurity perspective. It's not an if, it's when. Yeah. And I can tell you from experience, it's terrible to go into a business and tell them, I can't really help you, because it's too late, right? You're a victim of ransomware. You don't have a good backup. You haven't done any of these things. You're going to have to pay the ransom, or we're going to have to rebuild this whole thing, and it's going to cost you $10,000. Yeah. 15, 20, like whatever that looks like.
Back to the bad news bears stories.
Yeah.
And you hate to be that way, but that's reality. And, that's one of the things that we plan to talk about next week is ransomware and what that looks like and how to prepare. But yeah, I mean, when you're on the backside of an event, unfortunately, sometimes it's too late to put plans in place. You got to have that stuff done prior to a breach taking place.
So we're going to kind of wrap it up there. And if you do need some help, or you do have additional questions and you want to know more about cybersecurity insurance, you want to know more about cybersecurity programs to make you ready for cybersecurity insurance, CatchMark is here to help, and Brian and I can both assist in those, and our whole tech staff can help you to get ready and help you to answer those questions. Until next time, I'm Brent Raeth and with Brian Sibary, and we appreciate your time at the CatchMark Sibary Cybersecurity Podcast. And maybe next week we'll make it 3 for 6 and get back to 500, Brian. What do you think?
Yeah. Everyone stay cyber safe in the next 2 weeks.
Stay cyber safe, according to Sibary. So, and that's all we got for today. We appreciate your time and thank you very much.